The massive space station hung in the void like a metal flower. Naxos Prime was the biggest neutral meeting place in the galaxy. Today it hosted the most important peace talks in 1,000 years. Kim Tae-ho walked through the gleaming corridors. His black diplomatic uniform felt heavy on his shoulders. Behind him, 2 other humans followed. Park Sun-mi wore her military dress uniform, her face stone cold. Yoon Dae-jin carried a datapad filled with trade numbers that nobody would care about today. The main conference room could hold 1,000 beings. Today it was packed. Representatives from 47 different species sat in a great circle. Some had scales, others had fur. A few looked like walking trees. All of them stared at the 3 humans who took their seats in the center. Ambassador Veltar stood up first. He was tall and blue with 4 arms and cold yellow eyes. His voice echoed through the room's speakers. "We gathered today to solve the human problem," he said. "For 50 years, humans have spread across the galaxy like a disease. They take worlds that belong to others. They ignore our laws. They refuse to follow our rules." Kim Tae-ho sat quietly. He had heard this speech many times before. High Chancellor Mordak rose next. He looked like a giant beetle with too many eyes. His shell was black and covered in scars from old wars. "Humans are dangerous," Mordak clicked. "They fight when they should surrender. They build when they should ask permission. They grow when they should stay still. This ends today." One by one, the alien leaders spoke. They all said the same thing. Humans were too wild, too fast, too unpredictable. They needed to be controlled. The Zephyrian delegate waved her tentacles angrily. "Humans took 3 of our mining worlds. They said the worlds were empty. But we were going to use them next century." The Korthak representative slammed his fist on his desk. "Human ships fly through our space without asking. They say it's faster than going around. This is rude." Park Sun-mi's jaw got tighter with each complaint. These aliens had controlled the galaxy for so long. They thought they owned everything. They couldn't understand why humans wouldn't just do what they were told. Finally, Velthar stood again. In his 4 hands, he held a golden data crystal. "We offer humanity peace," he said. "But peace has a price. These are our terms." The crystal projected a hologram above the center of the room. Numbers and star charts filled the air. Kim Tae-ho read them without changing his expression. "Humans must leave 80% of their colonies," Velthar continued. "You may keep only the worlds you had 20 years ago. All other planets must be returned to their rightful owners." The rightful owners who had never lived on them, Kim Tae-ho thought. The rightful owners who had marked them on a map and done nothing else. "Second," Mordak clicked, "human population must be limited. No more than 1 billion humans may live outside Earth. All others must return home or face removal." Park Sun-mi's hand moved slightly toward her weapon. Kim Tae-ho caught her eye and shook his head once. "Third," said the Altarian delegate, "human military forces must be reduced by 90%. Your remaining ships will operate under Confederation oversight. No human may command more than 10 vessels." The room buzzed with approval. The aliens thought they were being generous. They could have demanded complete surrender. Instead, they were letting humanity keep something. "Fourth," Velthar's voice got colder, "humans will pay war reparations for the next 100 years. 50% of all human industrial output will go to the Confederation treasury." Finally, Mordak spread his forearms wide. "Humanity will join the Confederation as a junior member. You will have no voting rights for 50 years. Your representatives must be approved by this council. You will follow our laws without question." The hologram changed to show human space divided into colored sections. Each color belonged to a different alien empire. Earth itself was marked with a red circle, labeled Quarantine Zone. Kim Tae-ho looked at the projection for a long time. The aliens watched him, waiting for his answer. Some looked satisfied. Others looked hungry, already thinking about which human worlds they would claim. "These terms are generous," Velthar said. "We could simply take what we want by force. Humanity is outnumbered 200 to 1. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your ships are fewer and weaker. Accept these terms and your species survives." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at Kim Tae-ho. He was just one human sitting among hundreds of aliens. He looked small and weak compared to the massive beings around him. Park Sun-mi leaned forward slightly. Her hand rested on her datapad, but Kim Tae-ho knew she was thinking about the reports hidden inside it. Reports about human colonies that thrived on worlds these aliens called impossible to live on. Reports about human factories that built ships faster than anyone thought possible. Reports about human soldiers who never ever gave up. Yoon Dae-jin was thinking about the trade routes. Human merchants had found paths through space that cut travel time in half. They had made deals with species the Confederation had never even met. The galaxy was bigger than these old empires knew. Kim Tae-ho stood up slowly. The room got even quieter. Some aliens leaned forward to hear what he would say. "Honored delegates," Kim Tae-ho said in a calm voice. "Humanity thanks you for your generous offer. We understand the time and effort you have put into these terms." Velthar nodded, already thinking about his victory speech. "However," Kim Tae-ho continued, "we will need time to consider your proposal. This is a decision that affects our entire species. We cannot answer hastily." Mordak's eyes narrowed. "How much time do you need, human? Days? Weeks?" Kim Tae-ho smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "We will give you our answer tomorrow morning. That should be sufficient." The aliens looked at each other, confused. They had expected begging. They had expected desperate counteroffers. They had expected humans to act like every other species that faced overwhelming force. Instead, the humans were acting like they had a choice. "Very well," Velthar said finally. "Tomorrow morning, then. But do not mistake our patience for weakness. These terms will not improve with delay." Kim Tae-ho nodded politely. "Of course not. We understand perfectly." He gestured to his companions. Park Sun-mi and Yoon Dae-jin stood up smoothly. Together, the three humans walked toward the exit. As they reached the door, Kim Tae-ho turned back once. His eyes swept across the room full of aliens who were so certain they had won. "Until tomorrow," he said quietly. The door closed behind them with a soft hiss. The human quarters on Nexus Prime were small but secure. The walls blocked all listening devices, and the air recyclers hummed quietly in the background. Kim Tae-ho sat at a round table with his two companions. The weight of their entire species' future pressed down on them. Park Sun-mi activated her datapad. The screen showed classified military reports that made Kim Tae-ho's blood run cold. "It's worse than we thought," she said. "Our intelligence network intercepted communications between 12 major Confederation species. They've been planning this for 30 years. The hologram above her pad showed fleet movements, supply chains, and battle plans. Kim Tae-ho studied them carefully. The aliens weren't just offering peace terms. They were preparing for war. Look at this," Park Sun-mi pointed to a series of dates. 6 months ago, they started moving military supplies to staging areas near human space. 3 months ago, they began joint training exercises. Last month, they agreed on how to divide our territory between them. Yoon Dae-jin shook his head. "They never intended to honor any agreement. These peace talks are just theater. They want us to surrender without a fight." Kim Tae-ho remembered his grandfather's stories about the old wars on Earth, how smaller armies had defeated larger ones by refusing to fight the way their enemies expected, how determination had overcome impossible odds. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. The wall screen lit up, showing a woman's face. Choi Hye-jin was the governor of New Busan, a human colony on the edge of contested space. "Kim Tae-ho," she said, her voice strained. "I hope you're sitting down. We've been monitoring alien fleet movements near our sector. They're not just preparing for one invasion. They're preparing for dozens." The screen split to show a star map. Red dots marked alien military bases. There were hundreds of them, all pointing toward human worlds. "Governor Choi," Kim Tae-ho said, "how are the colonies responding to the threat?" Choi Hye-jin smiled grimly. "See for yourself." The image changed to show New Busan from orbit. When Kim Tae-ho had last visited, it was a simple farming world with a few small cities. Now orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like a metal web. The cities had grown into fortress factories that never stopped producing. "Every human colony is doing the same thing," Choi Hye-jin continued. "We're not waiting for permission. We're not asking for help. We're getting ready." Park Sun-mi leaned forward. "Governor, what about civilian evacuation? If war comes—" "Admiral Park," Choi Hye-jin interrupted. "With respect, we're not evacuating. We're not running. This is our home now. We'll defend it." The transmission ended, leaving the three diplomats in silence. Another chime brought a new face to the screen. Dr. Yang Min-soo was humanity's leading expert on alien psychology. His research centers were scattered across a dozen worlds, always studying, always learning. Ambassador Kim, Dr. Yang said, I've been analyzing the aliens' behavior during these talks. They're making a critical mistake. Kim Tae-ho raised an eyebrow. What kind of mistake? They think we're like them, Dr. Yang explained. Every species in the Confederation follows the same pattern. They expand slowly, claim territory carefully, and submit to stronger powers when faced with overwhelming force. They can't understand why we don't do the same. The screen showed images of various alien species. Each one had taken centuries to spread beyond their home systems. Each one had accepted their place in the galactic hierarchy. Humans are different, Dr. Yang continued. We adapt fast. We take risks. We find solutions instead of accepting problems. To them, this looks like madness. They think we're too stupid to know when we're beaten. Yoon Dae-jin frowned. But they're right about the numbers. They do outnumber us 200-1. Dr. Yang smiled. Numbers don't tell the whole story. Let me show you something. The screen displayed production statistics from human colonies, shipbuilding rates, mineral extraction, population growth, technological development. All the lines pointed upward at steep angles. We've been in space for 50 years, Dr. Yang said. In that time, we've colonized more worlds than most species manage in 5 centuries. We've developed technologies they never imagined. We've created trade networks that span half the galaxy. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. They think they're negotiating with a primitive species that got lucky. They don't realize they're facing an entirely new kind of civilization. The transmission ended, leaving them with more questions than answers. Kim Tae-ho stood up and walked to the window. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see the docking bays where alien ships waited. Each ship carried representatives who thought they had already won. There's something else, Park Sun-mi said quietly. Something I haven't told either of you. Kim Tae-ho and Yoon Dae-jin turned to look at her. Project Exodus, she said. It's real? It's been operational for 5 years. Kim Tae-ho had heard whispers about Project Exodus in classified briefings, a secret program that prepared humanity for the worst-case scenario. He had hoped it was just a contingency plan. Park Sun-mi activated another file on her datapad. The hologram showed ship designs unlike anything in the public records, weapons that didn't appear in any military manual, defense systems that seemed impossible. Every human colony has been preparing, she said, not just with conventional defenses. We've been developing capabilities the aliens have never seen before. She showed them footage from a classified test. A single human frigate faced a squadron of captured alien warships in a mock battle. The fight lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, the alien ships were drifting hulks and the human vessel was barely damaged. How? Yoon Dae-jin whispered. We learn from our enemies, Park Sun-mi said. Every alien ship we've encountered, we've studied. Every battle they've fought, we've analyzed. Every weakness they have, we've cataloged. Kim Tae-ho sat back down, his mind racing. The aliens thought they were offering generous terms to a defeated species. They had no idea they were threatening the most adaptable and determined species the galaxy had ever seen. What about Earth? He asked. Park Sun-mi's expression grew darker. Earth isn't defenseless anymore. The orbital installations alone could hold off a fleet 100 times larger than anything the Confederation has ever assembled. Kim Tae-ho thought about his childhood on Earth. The blue skies, the green forests, the cities full of people who dreamed of distant stars. His grandfather had told him stories about ancient warriors who protected their homes against impossible odds. Now it was his turn to make that choice. They want an answer tomorrow morning, he said finally. What will you tell them? Yoon Dae-jin asked. Kim Tae-ho looked at his companions. Park Sun-mi, who had spent her life preparing for this moment. Yoon Dae-jin, who understood the true scope of human achievement. Both of them were ready to face whatever came next. I'll tell them the truth, Kim Tae-ho said. I'll tell them that humanity chooses its own path. Outside the window, alien ships continued their patient orbit of Nexus Prime. Their crews probably thought the humans were desperately trying to find some way to accept defeat. Gracefully, they were wrong. Humanity had never learned how to surrender. Tomorrow, the galaxy would discover what that really meant. The conference room buzzed with excitement when the humans returned. Alien delegates whispered among themselves, making final bets on how quickly humanity would accept their terms. Some had already prepared celebration feasts for their ships. Others were planning which human worlds they would claim first. Kim Tae-ho walked to the center of the room with the same calm expression he had worn the day before. Park Sun-mi and Yoon Dae-jin followed him, their faces showing nothing. The three humans took their seats in the circle of predators. Ambassador Velthar stood first. His forearms spread wide in what he thought was a gesture of magnanimous victory. "Welcome back, humans," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber's speakers. "We trust you have considered our generous offer carefully. The Confederation awaits your acceptance." Kim Tae-ho remained seated for a moment longer, looking around the room. He saw the hungry expressions on alien faces, the barely contained excitement, the absolute certainty that they had won. Finally, he rose to his feet. "Honored delegates," Kim Tae-ho began, his voice clear and steady. "Humanity has indeed considered your proposal with great care. We have discussed every term, examined every clause, and weighed every consequence." The room fell silent. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. "We have reviewed your demands for 80% of our colonies," Kim Tae-ho continued. "We have considered your population limits, your military restrictions, and your reparation payments. We have examined your offer of junior membership in the Confederation." High Chancellor Mordak leaned forward, his beetle-like shell clicking with anticipation. "And?" Velthar prompted. Kim Tae-ho's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "We have one response to your generous terms," he said quietly. "No." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. For several seconds, the room was completely silent. Then the whispers began growing louder as the aliens tried to process what they had just heard. "No." Velthar's yellow eyes widened. "I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood. Did you say no?" "I did," Kim Tae-ho replied calmly. "Humanity rejects your terms completely and without reservation." The whispers became shouts. Delegates jumped to their feet, waving arms and tentacles and other appendages. The translator system struggled to keep up with the babble of outraged voices. High Chancellor Mordak slammed his fist on his desk so hard that it cracked. "You cannot refuse. You have no choice." Kim Tae-ho turned to face the Chancellor directly. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the vast room. "You mistake our desire for peace as weakness," he said. "You confuse our willingness to negotiate as desperation. You assume that because we are few, we must be helpless." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You are wrong on all counts." Park Sun-mi stood up beside him, her military bearing unmistakable. Her voice was harder than steel when she spoke. "Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Confederation. All treaties are void. All agreements are cancelled. All diplomatic relations are severed." The room erupted in chaos. Aliens shouted over each other, their voices creating a roar that the translation systems couldn't handle. Emergency lights began flashing as the station's computers detected rising stress levels throughout the facility. Yoon Dae-jin rose to join his companions. His quiet voice somehow cut through the noise. "Furthermore," he said, "any ship entering human space without permission will be considered hostile. We suggest you update your star charts accordingly." Ambassador Velthar recovered first. His blue skin flushed darker with anger. "You're signing your species' death warrant," he shouted. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? We offered you mercy. We offered you survival." Kim Tae-ho looked at him with something that might have been pity. "You offered us slavery," he said simply. "Humanity has a long history of rejecting such offers." The Zephyrian delegate thrashed her tentacles wildly. "Primitive fools! You can't fight the entire galaxy." "We're not fighting the entire galaxy," Park Sun-mi replied. "We're fighting those parts of it that choose to fight us." High Chancellor Mordak pushed through the crowd of delegates until he stood directly in front of Kim Tae-ho. His multiple eyes blazed with fury, and his voice was a threatening growl. "You think your little ships and your few colonies can stand against the combined might of 47 species? You think your crude technology can match weapons refined over millennia? You think your primitive minds can outthink civilizations that ruled the stars when your ancestors were crawling in mud?" Kim Tae-ho met his gaze without flinching. "I think," he said quietly, "that you're about to find out." The three humans turned toward the exit. Behind them, the alien delegates continued shouting, but their voices seemed to be growing more desperate than angry. "Wait," the Altarian delegate called out. "You can't just leave." "We're not finished here." Kim Tae-ho paused at the door and looked back over his shoulder. Yes, he said. We are. As they walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, other aliens pressed against the windows of shops and restaurants, staring at the three humans who had just declared war on the galaxy. Some looked angry. Others looked confused. A few looked afraid. At the docking bay, their small diplomatic vessel waited. It looked tiny compared to the massive alien ships that surrounded it. The contrast seemed to sum up everything the Confederation believed about the balance of power in the galaxy. Park Sunmi paused at the airlock and turned to her companions. Are we really doing this? She asked. Kim Tae-ho thought about the human colonies scattered across hundreds of worlds. Farmers and miners, scientists and soldiers, children who had been born among the stars and considered the galaxy their birthright. All of them were counting on the three people standing in this docking bay. We already did it, he said. Now we go home and prepare for what comes next. As their ship powered up and pulled away from Nexus Prime, the three humans could see alien vessels beginning to move. Communications arrays lit up as urgent messages flashed across the galaxy. Fleet commanders received new orders. Military bases went on high alert. The Confederation was mobilizing for war. In the main conference room they had left behind, Ambassador Velthar stood among the chaos of shouting delegates. His four hands shook as he tried to comprehend what had just happened. For 1,000 years, the Confederation had been the ultimate authority in the galaxy. Species knelt before their power. Worlds begged for their mercy. Nobody said no to them. Nobody except three humans who had walked away as if the combined might of 47 species meant nothing at all. High Chancellor Mordak was already calling his fleet commanders, his voice filled with rage and humiliation. The other delegates were making similar calls, summoning their ships, preparing their weapons. None of them stopped to wonder why the humans had seemed so calm. None of them asked why three people facing impossible odds hadn't shown any fear. They should have wondered. They should have been afraid. The humans were going home to a species that had never learned the meaning of surrender. A species that got stronger when threatened, more dangerous when cornered, more determined when facing impossible odds. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped asking for peace and started demanding it. 6 months after the humans walked out of the peace talks, the galaxy was a very different place. Reports flowed into the Confederation capital every day, and each one brought more confusion and worry. Ambassador Velthar stood in the central command room, staring at displays that showed the current state of human space. What he saw made no sense. The humans should have been cowering in fear, begging for mercy. Instead, they seemed to be thriving. Show me the new Busan sector again, he ordered. The holographic display zoomed in on a system that had been a simple farming colony just months ago. Now it bristled with defense platforms, manufacturing stations, and patrol ships. The transformation was impossible. No species could build that much that fast. High Chancellor Mordak clicked his way into the room, his shell scarred from stress-induced molting. Any word from our spies? Velthar asked. That's the problem, Mordak replied, his voice bitter. We don't have any spies in human space anymore. They found them all. Every single one. Some were sent back with polite messages saying their diplomatic immunity was revoked. Others simply vanished. Velthar's forearms twitched with frustration. How can they detect our best intelligence operatives? We don't know, Mordak admitted. Our spy networks have worked for centuries. No species has ever been able to neutralize them so completely. The display changed to show another human world. Beiji-wan was loading the last civilian transport from a border colony. But this wasn't a panicked evacuation. The civilians moved in orderly lines carrying only personal belongings. Everything else stayed behind. They're abandoning their outer colonies, Velthar said with satisfaction. Finally, they're showing some sense. Are they? Mordak studied the images more carefully. Look at what they're leaving behind. The human colony didn't look abandoned. It looked transformed. Automated defense systems covered every approach. Manufacturing facilities continued operating without crews. The spaceport could handle military vessels instead of civilian transports. They're not retreating, Mordak realized. They're repositioning. Every world they evacuate becomes a fortress. A new report arrived from the Zephyrian Border Patrol. Their commander's voice was strained as he described the latest human activity. They're not following any known military doctrine, the report said. Human civilians work alongside soldiers. Their factories produce military equipment around the clock. Children as young as 10 are learning to operate defense systems. Velthar paused the recording. Children? It gets worse, Mordak said. Show him the trade reports. The display switched to economic data. Lines and numbers filled the air, telling a story that made no sense to the watching aliens. Human trade hasn't decreased, the economic analyst's voice continued. It's increased. They've made new agreements with 17 neutral species. Their merchant ships are traveling through space we've never even explored. Velthar studied the numbers with growing alarm. How can they expand their trade network while preparing for war? Because they're not just preparing for war, a new voice said. They're preparing for everything. The speaker was Han Soo-jung, a human diplomat who had remained on neutral worlds after the walkout. Her image appeared on the communication screen, transmitted from the independent trading station at Farpoint. Ambassador Han, Velthar said coldly, I'm surprised you have the audacity to contact us. Han Soo-jung smiled. I'm here representing several neutral species who are concerned about the current situation. They've asked me to deliver a message. And what message? Mordak demanded. They want you to know that they will not participate in any action against humanity. In fact, 3 more species have signed mutual defense pacts with human colonies. The silence in the command room was deafening. Impossible, Velthar whispered. The Karathi were particularly impressed by human asteroid mining techniques, Han Soo-jung continued. The Valerian Consortium is very interested in human manufacturing methods. The Free Traders Union has found human navigation methods to be remarkably efficient. She leaned forward slightly, her expression serious. You see, the other species have been watching this situation develop. They've noticed that humans don't conquer the people they defeat. They don't enslave the civilizations they encounter. They make partners instead of subjects. Mordak's eyes narrowed. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything, Han Soo-jung replied. I'm stating it directly. The galaxy is choosing sides, and most of it isn't choosing yours. The transmission ended, leaving the alien leader staring at a blank screen. Lies, Velthar said, but his voice lacked conviction. Check the intelligence reports, Mordak ordered his aide. The aide's hands shook as he activated the classified files. What appeared on the screen confirmed their worst fears. 43 species remained in the Confederation. That sounded like a lot until they realized that over 200 independent species existed in the galaxy. Most of them had been neutral before the crisis began. Now, many of them were quietly reaching out to humanity. Look at this, the aide whispered, highlighting a section of the report. The humans have established a new organization. They're calling it the Commonwealth. The display showed a different kind of alliance. Species joined as equals. Trade flowed freely between members. Military protection was offered without political control. It was everything the Confederation claimed to be but had never actually become. How many members? Velthar asked. 23 species so far, the aide replied, including some we've never heard of. The humans have made contact with civilizations in unexplored sectors. Mordak's shell cracked audibly. They're building their own empire. No, Velthar said slowly, understanding dawning in his yellow eyes. That's what we would do. That's what we expected them to do. But look at the structure. Look at the agreements. He studied the Commonwealth Charter carefully. Every species had equal voting rights. No species could be expelled without cause. Military forces remained under local control. Trade disputes were settled by neutral arbitration. They're not building an empire, he realized. They're building something new. A priority alert flashed across their screens. Fleet Admiral Kang Ho-seok appeared on the main display, speaking from the bridge of a human warship. His message was brief and professional. This is Admiral Kang of the Human Defense Force. We are transmitting new navigation warnings for all vessels traveling near Commonwealth space. Please update your charts accordingly. The transmission included detailed star maps showing human patrol routes, defense zones, and safe passage corridors. Any ship following the guidelines would be allowed to pass peacefully. Any ship ignoring them would be considered hostile. They're treating us like any other potential threat, Mordak observed, not like their greatest enemies. Not like their conquerors, just like another group of people they might have to fight. Velthar felt something cold growing in his stomach. The humans weren't afraid of the Confederation. They weren't even particularly angry. They were simply prepared to do whatever was necessary to protect themselves and their allies. Sir, the aide said urgently, We're receiving reports from our forward scouts. What kind of reports? They've detected massive fleet movements in human space, but the ships don't match any known human designs. The display showed grainy images captured by long-range sensors. The vessels were clearly human-built, but they incorporated technologies and design elements from multiple species. They were larger than previous human ships, more heavily armed, and surrounded by sensor signatures that defied analysis. They're not just building new ships, Velthar whispered. They're building better ships. They're learning from everyone. A communication request flashed on their screens. The source was High Command of the Confederation Grand Fleet. Accept it, Mordak ordered. Grand Admiral Thexkar appeared on the screen. His reptilian features were twisted with frustration and something that might have been fear. The Grand Fleet is ready, he reported. 8,000 ships from 30 species. The largest military force in galactic history. Excellent, Velthar said, trying to sound confident. When do we attack? Thexkar hesitated.
Sir, I must report some
concerns from my subordinate commanders. The humans have been broadcasting their readiness reports on open channels. They want us to know exactly what they're prepared for. What kind of readiness reports? Mordak demanded. Industrial capacity, ship production rates, military reserves, defense capabilities. Thexkar's voice grew quieter. Sir, according to these reports, humanity can replace their entire fleet faster than we can destroy it. The command room fell silent again. Outside the windows, the lights of the Confederation capital twinkled peacefully, unaware that their leaders were facing the possibility of a war they might not win. Impossible, Velthar said again, but the word carried no weight. There's more, Thexkar continued. They've issued a final statement. They want to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. They're offering one last chance for peaceful coexistence. Terms? Mordak asked. Stay out of Commonwealth space. Respect Commonwealth shipping. Honor existing agreements with Commonwealth members. That's all? Velthar laughed bitterly. They're dictating terms to us now. No, sir, Thexkar corrected. They're offering to ignore us. There's a difference. The transmission ended, leaving the alien leaders alone with their thoughts and their fears. The Grand Fleet of the Confederation was the most magnificent sight the galaxy had ever seen. 8,000 warships from 30 different species stretched across space in perfect formation. Each vessel represented centuries of military tradition and technological development. Together they formed an armada that no single species had ever faced. Grand Admiral Thexkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the final preparations. His reptilian features showed confidence, but his clawed hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the battle plans. All ships report ready, his aide announced. We await your orders, Admiral. Thexkar looked at the tactical display. Ahead lay human space, defended by perhaps 300 ships. The numbers were so overwhelmingly in the Confederation's favor that the battle computers couldn't even calculate. Odds for human survival. Begin. The assault, he ordered. The first human world they encountered was called New Sol. It had been a mining colony before the crisis began. Now it bristled with defense platforms and patrol ships. The human defenders didn't retreat as the massive alien fleet approached. Instead, they formed a defensive line and waited. Admiral Park Sun-mi watched the approaching armada from the bridge of her flagship. Around her, human officers worked calmly at their stations. No one seemed particularly worried about facing impossible odds. Confederation fleet is broadcasting surrender demands, her communications officer reported. Any response? Park Sun-mi asked. Captain Ominjai sent a reply from his squadron. The officer replied with a slight smile. He said, "Come and take it." The battle began at extreme range. Confederation ships fired their best weapons at the human defense line. The energy beams and missile barrages that should have swept away the defenders simply disappeared into clouds of metallic particles that had appeared out of nowhere. Defensive screens, Admiral Thexkar observed. Crude but effective. All ships, close to medium range and prepare for coordinated assault. But as the Grand Fleet moved closer, something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't stay in their defensive formation. Instead, they scattered in all directions, moving in patterns that made no tactical sense. What are they doing? Thexkar demanded. Are they retreating? His tactical officer studied the sensor readings. No, sir. I'm not sure what they're doing. Captain Ominjai's Ghost Squadron struck first. The human fighters seemed to appear out of empty space. directly behind the Confederation command ships. Their weapons were smaller than the aliens' massive guns, but they cut through enemy armor like it was made of paper. Impossible, Thexkar whispered. How did they get past our sensors? The answer came in the form of 20 human frigates that materialized in the middle of his formation. They had been there all along, invisible to alien detection systems, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. New technology, his aide reported, panic creeping into his voice. Their ships don't appear on our sensors unless they want to. The battle that the Confederation expected to end in minutes stretched into hours. Human ships fought in ways that defied every rule of space combat. They used damage to their advantage, turning crippled vessels into guided missiles. They sacrificed territory to destroy enemy morale. They adapted their tactics in real time, making each engagement different from the last. General Nam Wu-jin coordinated the ground defenses on New Seoul. When Confederation landing craft reached the surface, they found humans who had been preparing for this moment for months. Every building was a fortress. Every civilian was a potential combatant. Every street was a killing ground designed to channel invaders into carefully planned ambushes. This isn't warfare, one Confederation ground commander reported. This is madness. They fight like every battle is their last. But the real shock came when Dr. Lim Hae-won activated humanity's secret weapon. It wasn't a super weapon or a doomsday device. It was something far more terrifying to the aliens. Human industrial capacity unleashed. The sky above New Seoul filled with new ships. Not dozens of vessels, but hundreds. They poured out of hidden manufacturing facilities that had been working around the clock. Each ship was crewed and ready for battle. Where are they coming from? Thexkar demanded. Unknown, sir, his aide replied. Our intelligence indicated humans had perhaps 1,000 ships total. We've already engaged with more than that number. The tactical display updated to show the true scope of human preparation. Every mining station had been converted into a shipyard. Every civilian facility had military production capability. Every human world was churning out weapons of war faster than the Confederation had thought possible. They're building ships faster than we can destroy them, Thexkar realized. As the battle raged, more human fleets arrived from other systems. Admiral Park Sun-mi's reinforcements included vessels from a dozen Commonwealth species. The aliens found themselves fighting not just humans, but an alliance that had been quietly growing for months. The turning point came when Captain Oh Min-jae's squadron penetrated the Grand Fleet's command formation. Their target wasn't random destruction. They struck with surgical precision at the fleet's coordination systems. High Chancellor Mordak was aboard the command ship when the human fighters reached it. He watched in horror as his communications arrays exploded, his navigation systems failed, and his weapons went offline. The ship was disabled, not destroyed. The humans wanted prisoners, not martyrs. Surrender, he found himself saying into his emergency transmitter. All ships, cease fire and surrender. The response from his own fleet shocked him. Half of his captains had already begun retreating. The other half were too busy fighting for their lives to acknowledge his orders. The Grand Fleet, which had entered human space in perfect formation, fled in complete disorder. Ships abandoned their positions and jumped to hyperspace without coordinating with their allies. The largest military force in galactic history had been broken not by superior numbers, but by superior determination. 3 days later, Kim Tae-ho stood in the same conference room where the crisis had begun. This time the humans weren't sitting in the center surrounded by hostile aliens. They were at the head table, while representatives from 47 species sat in the audience. Ambassador Velthar had been replaced by a junior diplomatic aide whose blue skin was pale with fear. High Chancellor Mordak sat in restraints, having been captured when his command ship was disabled. The Commonwealth offers the following terms, Kim Tae-ho announced. All Confederation forces will withdraw from Commonwealth space immediately. All species that participated in the attack will pay reparations for the damage caused. All prisoners will be returned in exchange for a formal apology and guarantee of non-aggression, the alien delegates whispered among themselves. These terms were far more generous than anything they would have offered in similar circumstances. Furthermore, Park Sun-mi added, any species wishing to join the Commonwealth will be welcomed as an equal member. We harbor no ill will toward those who are misled by their leaders. Velthar's replacement stood up shakily. And if we refuse these terms? Kim Tae-ho looked at him with the same calm expression he had worn a year ago. Then you refuse them, he said simply. The Commonwealth will continue to grow and prosper. You are welcome to join us or not, as you see fit, but you will not threaten us again." The aide sat down heavily, understanding finally dawning on his alien features. The humans weren't demanding submission. They weren't establishing an empire. They were simply making it clear that they would defend themselves and their allies against any threat. One by one, the Confederation species accepted the terms. What else could they do? Their great fleet was scattered. Their military doctrine had been proven obsolete. Their leadership was captured or discredited. But more importantly, they had learned something about humanity that no intelligence report had ever captured. Humans didn't fight to conquer. They fought to protect. They didn't seek to dominate others. They sought to build something better. 3 months later, 23 species had applied to join the Commonwealth. The galaxy had a new power, one that offered partnership instead of servitude, cooperation instead of conquest. Kim Tae-ho stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, watching ships from a dozen species dock peacefully side by side. Human merchants traded with alien customers. Commonwealth defense ships patrolled side by side with former enemies who had chosen to become allies. Park Sun-mi joined him at the viewport. "Any regrets about walking away from those peace talks?" Kim Tae-ho smiled. "The only regret I have is that it took them so long to understand what we were offering." "And what was that?" "A chance to build something better than an empire," he replied. "A chance to show that different species can work together without one dominating the others. A chance to prove that the galaxy is big enough for everyone." In the distance, the lights of human colonies twinkled among the stars. But they weren't alone anymore. Alien settlements shared the same star systems, their different architectures and technologies blending into something new and beautiful. The galaxy was changing. For 1,000 years, it had been ruled by fear and force. Now it was being shaped by hope and cooperation. And it all began because 3 humans had refused to accept defeat and walked away from a peace they couldn't live with.